Once upon a time, I lived within driving distance of San Francisco, and I would visit periodically for one reason or another. And one such visit, I happened to be walking on the Embarcadero, which is the coastal sort of wharf district of San Francisco, incredibly tourist-dense. One of those places where tourists just gather, but nobody really knows why. It's just because that's where tourists go. Maybe it's because it always smells like popcorn and churros. I don't know. Anyhow, there was this crowd of people with suitcases who had clearly just gotten off of a cruise ship or a ferry or something, just sort of milling around on the sidewalk with that dazed look that tourists often have, not really sure what they're supposed to do or where they're supposed to go next. And this lady, presumably a local resident, came jogging down the sidewalk, just exercising in the part of the city with the most tourists. And she pushed her way through this crowd, and once she got out the other side, she turned around and shouted, "Goddamn tourists!" And I don't disagree with her sentiment necessarily, like I understand the frustration, but what was she expecting? Crowds of tourists are a predictable feature of the Embarcadero, an iconic feature even, prior to the virus, I suppose. And so that moment has always baffled and fascinated me. Subsequently, when I play City Skylines, I often ponder how one can use civil engineering to clearly signal that this space is designed for tourists and not for residents. This is a hard question for me because I avoid tourist areas everywhere that I go, even when I'm on vacation. And I would love a warning that I'm entering a tourist spot so that I can walk in a different direction. I don't know the answer to that, but I feel like putting the tourist area out in the ocean is a good start. This waterfront area in my city is based loosely on the wharf district of San Francisco that I was just talking about. But I've scaled it up in a way that's kind of inspired by the more lavish parts of coastal Dubai, where they build these giant sandbars for commercial districts or wealthy neighborhoods, that kind of thing. And I had this shape in mind, which I feel like I executed pretty well. I just don't really know what I'm going to do with it now that it's built. Obviously, I've started with a cargo harbor, and I'm going to spend some time connecting the railroad tracks to my main line, so that cargo from this harbor can move to any part of the city. Ultimately, I decided that this blade, so to speak, would be a good match for like a little military naval base. Traditionally, I haven't put military installations in my cities, just because it's kind of cliche, given that military bases are non-functional, as this is not a strategy game. And it's also just a very American thing to do to have military nearby, which is a cultural feature that I've always found very absurd and tried to distance myself from. But given all the fantasy that I'm already adding to Allantia, I thought it would be a fun opportunity to try it out. And given that I spent some time in the United States military, I feel like I can invoke the essence of a military facility fairly accurately in a way that one would not be able to do if they'd only ever seen military bases in video games. But it's been over 20 years since I got out, so maybe that's not true. built this monorail that runs along the edges of my blades, which I really like. Not only will it help with mobility, but also it adds a sort of architectural element that I like, that you'd have to be in an airplane to really appreciate. I'm also going to add a cruise ship dock and eventually a tram stop to make a little public transit interchange, which I will then have to connect to the larger network. Whenever I get to this point where I'm just building a lot of tracks, I'm reminded that it really breaks up the flow of a video having to stop and connect everything to a transit network. As I've mentioned before, I'm pondering ways to format a build video so that it's more concise and I'm not jumping from element to element. Hopefully I'll figure that out eventually. I've hit my time limit, but I still have a bunch of work to do on this district. Projects are piling up again. I have one more blade to populate, I have half of a high-density district to finish, and I have to figure out what to do with this middle space in between my farming district and my tourist district. You're probably seeing a video card that's already telling you which district I'm going to tackle next. So in a weird way, you know what I'm going to do even before I do. Time is a strange force, as is YouTube. I'll see you soon.